Hey everybody, welcome back to K-Man Security. So, today we're going to go over the last final part of the OWASP top 10. This time we're going to do unsafe consumption of AI. So, first off, I just want to say thank you so much for sticking out with me so far. I know 10 episodes about API is not very fun, especially OWASP, but you made it, we're here, so I'm super excited. So if you're ready to finish up, let's go. So what is unsafe consumption? So this is when APIs trust another API, right? So not too good. They trust it without validating it. It doesn't worry about the responses, the identity. It's just data, right? So it's a little scary. So when things are happening, it's not good. Okay. So let's just talk about a little bit of a workflow here. So let's pretend we have a coffee shop API, a payment API, Maps API, email API, SMS API. These are all talking to each other simultaneously. So a lot of times when it's passing information to the next step, who knows what it's going to get. So if I send a malicious script at the shipping API and it goes all the way to the SMS API, we're in big trouble, right? So not too cool. So we need to be very understanding of how the APIs are connecting and kind of things to think about, right? So why is this dangerous? So obviously third parties can return bad data. This is true. Those third parties can become compromised. We don't want that. Things can become unavailable. Sometimes we can return malicious scripts like cross-site scripting attacks, malware, whatever. We can return unexpected values like $999 for a can of Coca-Cola, right? So these things, they don't seem harmless at the time, but reality is it can be very harmful. So we need to be careful about how these are affecting the APIs and what the API is sending to another API, right? So APIs we trust daily. Here's some good examples. We trust payment gateways. We buy everything on Amazon, Walmart, everything that has an online store, we trust it, right? Is it safe? No, but we do it anyways. We trust weather apps. We rely on weather apps to tell us everything. So it's kind of important. Maps, Google Maps, Yandex Maps, all those different types of maps. We trust them all the time, really. Shipping, when we're looking for our order from Amazon, we're looking for that tracking app, right? Identity providers. So when we're looking up information about someone, or we're looking up someone for ourselves, or accessing information, we're always trusting that. AI APIs. Oh my God, we trust AI so much, but no one realizes these are APIs, and so these could get compromised. LLMs, same thing. It can compromise an LLM, and the API will send something crazy, and we're in trouble. So think about every section of your life when you're using the computer, and kind of ask yourself, does it have an API? Does it go anywhere? So think about that. Okay, dangerous assumption. If another API says it's okay, it must be true. That's wrong. Never blindly trust another system. It's true. You should never trust anything. You should always double verify everything, check your own work, stuff like this. Okay, so think about supply chain, right? So for people who don't know about supply chain, you need to think about this. So it's your security. So if you're depending on someone else to manage your security, that's not good, right? So if I'm trusting an API and I'm connecting the API to my product and that API gets compromised, so it's killed the supply chain and it's killed my web application, right? So think about that when you're using that, because I've done it before. I've made a chat app, and a couple times the API has gone down and I have nothing. My product is worthless. So, kind of think about those when you're thinking about how you're setting up your consumption, okay? So here's a good API in the wild, very brief one, but we had a researcher called Albino Wax, and he had looked at Shopify. Shopify seems to be a very broken system. And what happened was it was trusting external input. So obviously someone was able to create something they shouldn't have, maybe did a cross-site scripting, something, right? So the vulnerability type was obviously unsafe consumption, and it had a trust-bound issue. So meaning like it really just that didn't validate anything. It just said, oh, you send me some data? Great, come here. And so it was kind of dangerous, right? So the severity was high. Okay, so I'm not going to go too deep in that. It's pretty generic, but it's good to think about. Okay, so again, dangerous assumptions. Oh, I trust Stripe. Oh, I love Google. I trust it. I trust Azure. I trust my vendor. Oh, I trust AI. Don't do it, because things are not what they seem. Like, sure, you sit there and say, well, I have a strong password policy, I'm using a VPN, blah, blah, blah. No, things happen. Hackers are very smart nowadays. So you're going to make a mistake somewhere, and these APIs, these tools, they're going to get compromised. They do all the time. So always do your due diligence and think about security layering, right? Kind of think about the multi levels of security and how we can layer that. Okay, so secure design, verify everything. Make sure you're looking at everything correctly. Make sure you're using, like HTTPS, TLS, stuff like this. Validate the responses. Make sure things are going through okay. Check the signatures of a website. This is really important too. Understand and validate the schemas. You need to understand how things are working, how it's accepting data, sending out data, stuff like this. Handle failures. Make sure you guys are having safe handling. A lot of times when we are building apps, no one thinks about these error handling, right? So think about that a lot. And then, of course, apply least privilege. Don't trust anyone. I think there's a few famous people that I know who are really big on zero trust. And I think it's true. I think zero trust is the best way to go because you're saving yourself a lot of heartache and you're saving some money, right? So always, always, always apply least privilege, use secure methods, use HTTPS and TLS, okay? All right, so here's some key takeaways. So this API 10 happens when applications blindly trust external APIs. Happens a lot. The external responses aren't validated. Third-party failures become your failures. So remember, you rely on them, you're going to get burned, okay? So sometimes it's better to make your own stuff. So this is kind of what's happening, and I hope that you took away some useful information. So if you made it this far, congratulations. We've now completed the top 10 API of OWASP. So now, let's go through a web application that I built, and we will go through something we call unsafe consumption of API. So if you guys are ready, let's go. All right, everybody. So here we are at Brewdrop. So this is my custom-made vulnerability web application. It should map to the OWASP top 10, but I built this for students who need to get some hands-on experience and to build pen test reports, stuff like this. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to log in, kind of start looking at how we're going to look at this, kind of see what happens, okay? So I'm not going to go through the whole pen test methodology. That'll be like in future videos. But what I want to do is I do want to go through like endpoint that will matter to us later. So I'm going to take this one because you can see a V1. So we know if we think about versioning, it can be a little dangerous. So let's take that. We're going to take this into replay, and then we're going to kind of just adjust some methods here. So we're going to add a few parameters, kind of like partner and import, stuff like this. So let's go ahead and set this up just a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something like, oops. So we're going to add something like this. We're going to do partner shops, and then we're going to do something like import, okay? So let's see, we should be able to kind of get that looking pretty good. Let's change that from a get request to a post request. So now we've kind of seen some changes here. So what we want to do now is we actually want to change our application content from URL encoded or whatever to JSON, right? So remember, when we're feeding information, usually we want to go through JSON. A key note when you're adding JSON data, try to make a space in between your HTTP request, because I didn't, and I've gotten in trouble a few times. So think about that when you're doing that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of run through this quickly and kind of build out our JSON data. So we're going to say something like name, and then we're going to call this a script. we're gonna call it a script. So we're going to use like a cross-site scripting technique. So let's see, I'm just going to throw it in here. I'm not going to go through this too deeply. Okay. And then we're going to make another one. We're going to call it address. We're going to follow the parameter. Okay. And then we're going to say 123 Coffee Street. Okay. So what should happen is we have now created some data that will hopefully be accepted because we're using our bearer token. So obviously it should trust us. And we are using a API for partners. So somehow we've found this, and we're going to import our new company. So let's see if that'll work. All right, so we see it did. So obviously the API was very trusting, and it let me go to the partner gateway, went to the shop, and actually import my business. And here we are. So now we have cross-site scripting. We have success is true, data, shop ID 5. So if we go back to our web application, let's go ahead and just refresh, and we should see that cross-site scripting company. All right, here we are at the very bottom. Okay, now we didn't do anything. There's no alert, nothing popped up, but we do see that I was able to build a company. So that's not too cool. And reality is if they were able to put something malicious, we'd be in big trouble. Okay, so guys, hopefully this was a good ending to the unsafe consumption portion of the API of OWASP. And hopefully you guys like the OWASP Top 10. I thought it was really fun to go through. It kind of helped me to learn a little bit better. And hopefully you guys have been liking my content. So guys, now that we've gone through the OWASP Top 10, now we're going to get into more real web application testing and kind of more pen testing methodologies. Okay, so guys, hopefully you guys liked the video, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much.